Full story. How Samantha's absence at the wedding exposed family lies and revealed her true strength. Welcome to Silent Wars. Today, we bring you a powerful full story about family, betrayal, and finding inner peace. If you enjoy heartfelt stories that inspire and move you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel Silent Wars for more amazing content. At every family gathering, Samantha had always been the anchor, the one everyone turned to for advice, for help, or even just for a listening ear. After their father passed away, she took on the role of a second mother to her younger sister Taylor. She had been there through the rough patches, from Taylor's first heartbreak to her graduation day. Samantha helped her with everything from budgeting her first apartment to sending care packages when Taylor was overwhelmed in college. She was the steady presence in Taylor's life, the one who offered unconditional support, the one who believed in her even when others didn't. But standing at that summer BBQ, holding a plastic plate with a wilted piece of pasta salad in one hand, everything Samantha had known about her role in the family felt as fragile as the plastic fork she was gripping. As the conversation hummed around her, her cousin Emma strolled over from the grill, a hot dog in one hand, her face alight with a smile. Emma casually asked, "Are you flying out for Taylor's wedding next month, or just driving in?" The words hit Samantha like a bolt from the blue. "What wedding?" she blurted out, her voice sounding hollow even to her own ears. Emma laughed, clearly thinking she was being sarcastic, but Samantha's heart sank as she realized the devastating truth. Taylor, the sister she had raised, had planned her wedding without so much as a word to her. She had been excluded, left out of what should have been one of the most significant events in their shared history. Samantha's mind raced in a blur of confusion and disbelief. How could this happen? How could Taylor, the girl she had stayed up with through every tearful phone call, the girl who had once called her her best friend, decide to leave her out of something so monumental? Samantha felt a cold, heavy lump form in her chest, and she excused herself, telling Emma she needed to check on the potato salad, anything to escape the overwhelming sense of betrayal that had taken over her. Retreating to her car, the silence of the empty parking lot was a sharp contrast to the noisy buzz of the BBQ. Samantha sat in the driver's seat, her hands gripping the wheel as if it were her last tether to reality. The questions swirled in her mind, but no answers came. Her heart felt as though it were breaking with every passing second. How could she have been so blind to the fact that Taylor had chosen this moment to start a new chapter of her life without her? The sadness and shock were profound, but as the minutes ticked by, a quiet realization began to form. This wasn't just about the wedding, it was about all the years Samantha had given so much of herself to her family, only to find that she wasn't even considered important enough to be included in a moment as significant as her sister's wedding. For the next 2 days, Samantha couldn't escape the gnawing emptiness that settled in her chest. Every time she closed her eyes, the words from the BBQ echoed in her mind, her cousin's casual question, the surprise of hearing about Taylor's wedding. She replayed it again and again, trying to understand how her sister, the one she had raised and cared for, could have planned such an important event without even a mention of it to her. She had always been there for Taylor, sacrificing her own needs, always willing to drop everything for her. And yet, here she was, left out of the one event that should have mattered most. The hurt wasn't just the fact that she wasn't invited, it was the deeper wound of realizing that Taylor, her baby sister, had chosen this moment to move on without her. Samantha's own existence had become invisible, like an afterthought in the story of her sister's life. She had spent years playing the role of the supportive sibling, putting Taylor's needs before her own, only to be forgotten when it mattered most. Unable to bear the silence any longer, Samantha finally called her mother. She tried to stay calm, to keep her voice steady, as she asked if Taylor was really getting married. The answer came too casually, as though it were no big deal, as though Samantha's absence wasn't even worth acknowledging. "Yes," Next month. We didn't think you'd be free. Her mother's response cut deeper than the silence. It was the same dismissive tone that Samantha had come to recognize all too well, the same indifference her mother had shown when their father passed. When Samantha had tried to express her own pain and was told to pull herself together. The feeling of being unheard, unseen, was something Samantha had grown accustomed to over the years, but hearing it again, in this moment, left her feeling more invisible than ever. It wasn't just the wedding, it was the realization that she had been erased from her family's narrative, made insignificant, easy to disregard. The weight of that realization pressed heavily on her chest, and she sat in silence after the call ended, the sting of abandonment lingering long after her mother's voice faded from the phone. Instead of succumbing to the overwhelming urge to lash out or demand an explanation from her family, Samantha made a quiet, decisive choice. She needed space from the hurt, the betrayal, and the suffocating expectations that had come to define her relationships with her family. So, without a word to anyone, not even her best friend Rachel, who had stood by her side through heartaches and tough times, Samantha bought a one-way ticket to Iceland. It wasn't that she wanted to run away from her problems, she just needed a break from being the person who was always there for everyone else, the person others leaned on without ever truly offering anything in return. She had been the pillar for so long, and now, for the first time in ages, she longed to be the one who could lean on something, anything, that wasn't broken. The flight was surprisingly peaceful. The hum of the plane was a gentle lullaby, and as it soared across the vast expanse of the Atlantic, Samantha felt a quiet calm she hadn't experienced in months, maybe even years. The thought of the wedding, the unanswered questions, the pain, everything seemed to slip away as the landscape below turned from the mundane to the extraordinary. When Samantha arrived at her cabin in Iceland, nestled against a hillside of volcanic rock, she felt the weight of her life back home begin to lift. The cabin was simple, but beautiful, perched on the edge of a frozen lake, surrounded by the stillness of the earth. The air was crisp, the kind of cold that cleared the mind, and the fog that gently curled around the lake's surface only added to the sense of solitude. For the first time in a long time, Samantha felt no need to rush, no obligation to check her phone or keep track of the world she had left behind. She didn't think about Taylor, or her mother, or the empty seat at the wedding. In this vast, quiet place, Samantha could finally just be. No demands, no expectations, just the sound of the wind shifting over the water and the deep peace of being entirely alone with herself. The world outside seemed distant, almost irrelevant, and for the first time in years, she realized that she didn't need to be anywhere or anyone other than who she was in that moment. This was freedom, and it tasted like the cold, clean air, untouched and pure. Samantha's days in Iceland unfolded quietly, a stark contrast to the chaos and noise she had left behind. Each morning, she would bundle up in her warmest wool coat and step outside to the frozen lake that stretched endlessly before her. The world was muted beneath a thick blanket of snow, and the only sounds were the gentle crunch of her footsteps and the occasional whisper of wind through the bare branches. She found solace in the stillness, sitting for long moments on a weathered wooden bench, half buried in snow, watching the frozen surface glisten under the pale winter sun. In one such moment, Samantha took out her phone and snapped a simple photograph herself, wrapped in that familiar wool coat, framed by the quiet, desolate beauty of the Icelandic landscape behind her. There was no need for words, no caption to explain the image. It was a silent declaration, a way of saying, "I am here, and this is who I am now." When she posted it on Instagram, she wasn't looking for sympathy or attention. She was making herself visible on her own terms. Within minutes, her phone began to buzz messages and notifications from Taylor, her cousin Emma, and even her mother. But the messages held no warmth, No apology, no attempt to reach out with understanding or remorse. Instead, there was only silence, a silence heavier than any words could have been. This wasn't the silence of neglect or absence. It was a silence loaded with meaning. It was a deliberate withholding of presence, a subtle but powerful acknowledgement that Samantha was seen, yet not fully recognized. She was no longer the sister or daughter who belonged fully to the family narrative. She was someone who once mattered, now existing only on the periphery, a ghost haunting the edges of their lives. This quiet, this absence of connection, was compelling in its own right. Samantha realized she wasn't missing out on anything real. She wasn't losing the love of family, but the performance, the forced smiles, the strained conversations, the pretenses that had long defined their gatherings. She was here, alone but free from the dramas and superficiality that had worn her down for years. Being alone, in the vastness and silence of Iceland, was an act of courage and defiance. In this stillness, Samantha reclaimed herself. The power of silence became her voice, her presence a quiet rebellion against the neglect she had endured. And in that reclamation, she found something precious: peace. On the third morning of her quiet retreat in Iceland, Samantha's phone shattered the stillness of the cabin with a sudden, insistent ring. The sky outside was a dull, unyielding gray, casting a cold light over the frozen lake and barren landscape. She hesitated, her heart pounding as she glanced at the caller ID Rachel. Samantha wasn't expecting a cheerful check-in. Something felt off. Instead of a voice on the other end, she received a message, a link to a TikTok video, no explanation attached. Curiosity and a pang of anxiety compelled her to tap the link. The video burst to life, throwing her into the heart of chaos she had left behind. The scene was frantic. Guests shouting over each other, a bridesmaid weeping uncontrollably, and a centerpiece overturned in a mess of shattered glass and spilled flowers. The camera shook as it captured the pandemonium unfolding in real time, the atmosphere thick with tension and heartbreak. Then the camera found Taylor, the sister Samantha had raised and cared for so fiercely, standing at the center of the storm, her face streaked with tears, her voice breaking as she yelled accusations that cut through the noise like a knife. Samantha's stomach twisted as she heard Taylor's words. Her best friend, Rachel, the same Rachel who had just sent her the video, had been secretly sleeping with her fiancé, James. The betrayal was raw and unforgivable, exposed in a raw public spectacle that turned what should have been a day of joy into one of devastation. Samantha sat frozen, the shock crashing over her in waves. Her sister's perfect wedding, the dream she had once imagined, the future she had envisioned, was unraveling before her eyes, the fragile illusion of happiness shattered in a flood of tears and harsh truths. And here she was, miles away in the cold solitude of Iceland, powerless to step in, powerless to protect the sister she loved. The unexpected twist left Samantha speechless, caught between relief and sorrow. Relief that she hadn't been dragged into the toxic web of lies, sorrow for the pain Taylor now faced, and a profound sense of loss for the family she once thought she knew. It was a moment of reckoning, not just for Taylor and James, but for Samantha herself. The truths that had long been buried beneath the surface were now laid bare, forcing her to confront the fragile bonds of trust and the painful realities of betrayal. Though she wasn't physically present at the wedding, Samantha was witnessing the collapse of a carefully crafted facade. And in that witnessing, she found a new clarity, the courage to finally step away from illusions and face the truth, however difficult it might be. As the day wore on, Samantha's phone began to vibrate incessantly with missed calls and voicemails from her family. Each alert was a reminder of the ties she had temporarily severed, but beneath the surface, a sobering truth began to crystallize in her mind. They didn't truly miss her presence. They missed the role she had played in their lives. the dependable sister who had always been the glue holding things together, the quiet fixer who smoothed over conflicts and carried burdens others refused to bear. They missed what she did for them, the strength she lent, the sacrifices she made, not the woman she was beneath it all. One voicemail stood out starkly from the rest. It was her mother's voice, fragile and cracked with worry, pleading with Samantha to come home. "Taylor is devastated," she whispered, her tone trembling with the weight of helplessness. "We need you here. Please, Samantha." The desperation in her mother's voice was palpable, revealing a side of the family dynamic Samantha hadn't allowed herself to see fully before. Behind the facade of indifference, there was pain, a recognition that without Samantha, the family was unraveling. Yet, Samantha didn't answer the calls or return the messages. Instead, she chose to sit quietly and look out at the serene landscape beyond her cabin window, the same frozen lake shimmering under the pale light, the snow-dusted hills standing tall in solemn silence. The stillness enveloped her, a stark contrast to the emotional storms she had left behind. In this vast, quiet space, Samantha found the peace that had eluded her for so long. It was a peace born not from escape, but from reclaiming herself. For years, she had been caught in the exhausting cycle of giving, always the caregiver, the peacemaker, the unacknowledged pillar of support. But here, in this quiet moment, far from the demands and expectations, Samantha realized something profound. She had found something far more valuable than the hollow apologies and frantic calls waiting for her back home. She had found herself. This newfound strength was quiet but unyielding. It wasn't about punishing those who had wronged her or seeking validation. It was about embracing her own worth, honoring her needs, and finally recognizing that her value wasn't tied to what she did for others, but who she was at her core. Samantha's choice to remain distant was an act of self-preservation and quiet rebellion, a declaration that she would no longer lose herself in the chaos of family obligations. In this moment, Samantha was no longer just the strong one for everyone else. She was strong for herself. And that strength was the foundation upon which she would rebuild her life, on her own terms, with clarity, peace, and a heart finally free to heal. The final message from Taylor arrived quietly, almost hesitantly, as if she wasn't sure how to break through the wall Samantha had built around herself. It was brief, yet it carried the weight of years of unspoken pain and regret. "I know I hurt you. I didn't think it would matter this much. I thought you didn't want to be part of things anymore. Please, I need you." Those words lingered in Samantha's mind long after she read them. For a fleeting moment, she considered reaching out, typing back a response filled with the hurt and frustration that had accumulated over years of neglect and silence. But as she sat with the message, something had shifted deep inside her. The anger that once consumed her had softened, replaced not by sadness, but by a calm clarity. She had moved beyond the turbulent waves of emotion that had threatened to pull her under. Through the distance and the silence, Samantha had found a new kind of strength, a strength born from the space she had carved out for herself, away from the expectations and disappointments of her past. Instead of replying with a flood of words or demands for explanations, Samantha chose a different path, one that honored her journey and the peace she had fought so hard to achieve. She sat down and wrote a letter, simple and honest, expressing her truth without blame or bitterness. She did not feel the need to justify her absence or explain why she wasn't at the wedding, why she had chosen solitude over family chaos. Her words were not an accusation, but a gentle offering of closure. "I hope you find peace. I hope you tell the truth. I hope next time the invitation comes before the apology." This letter was her final act, not a surrender, but a declaration of self-respect and acceptance. It was Samantha's way of saying that she had learned to value herself beyond the roles imposed by others. She understood that forgiveness and reconciliation are processes that require honesty and mutual respect, not just hollow words or last-minute pleas. By sending this letter, Samantha reclaimed her narrative. She acknowledged the pain but refused to be defined by it. Instead, she chose to embrace hope for healing, for growth, and for a future where love is genuine and invitations are given with intention, not regret. In this act of quiet courage, Samantha demonstrated a powerful truth for anyone who has ever felt forgotten or unvalued: that sometimes the most profound strength lies not in fighting to be seen, but in choosing peace within yourself first. The morning light filtered gently through the frost-covered windows of Samantha's cabin, casting soft shadows across the wooden floor. Outside, the lake lay perfectly still, a vast mirror reflecting the endless expanse of sky above. The air was crisp and pure, carrying the subtle scent of pine and snow. As Samantha stirred awake, she felt a calmness settle over her, a quiet, profound sense of peace that had been absent from her life for far too long. For years, Samantha had chased victories, small wins in the face of family drama, moments of recognition that were always fleeting. She had battled the invisible weight of expectations, the burden of always being the strong one, the caretaker, the quiet backbone holding others together. But none of those battles had brought her this feeling of completeness, not until now. In this serene space, surrounded by the untouched beauty of the Icelandic wilderness, Samantha realized something deeply true. She was finally home. Home wasn't just a place or a building. It was a state of being. It was the gentle embrace of acceptance, the freedom to simply exist without apology or explanation. It was the quiet confidence that she was enough just as she was. There was no triumphant fanfare or dramatic breakthrough, no sweeping conclusion to the story she had lived. Instead, there was a simple, undeniable truth that echoed through every breath she took and every moment she spent wrapped in the warmth of her thick sweater. She had found herself. And in doing so, she had found a peace that transcended pain, disappointment, and heartache. As she stepped onto the back deck, the frozen lake shimmered under the pale gold light of the rising sun. The sky stretched wide and empty, a canvas of endless possibility. Samantha took a deep breath, letting the cold air fill her lungs, and felt the weight of the past lift from her shoulders. The silence around her was not empty, it was full of promise. In that moment, Samantha understood that home is not always where you start, but often where you choose to be. It is the sanctuary you build within yourself, the place where your soul can rest. And for the first time in years, she was truly at peace, anchored by the quiet strength that comes from knowing she belongs most importantly to herself. This story teaches us that true belonging and peace come not from others' recognition, but from embracing our own worth. Throughout life, many of us dedicate ourselves to family and loved ones, often putting their needs before our own. Yet, when we feel overlooked or excluded, it can leave deep wounds of loneliness and invisibility. The lesson here is profound. While it's natural to seek connection and acceptance, our deepest home is within ourselves. Learning to step away from situations that drain our spirit, to create space for reflection and healing, is an act of courage and self-respect. It reminds us that setting boundaries is not selfish but necessary for preserving our dignity and well-being. Even when faced with betrayal or abandonment, finding peace in solitude can restore our strength and clarity. Importantly, forgiveness and reconciliation may come in their own time, but they begin with honest acknowledgement of our feelings and truths. For older adults, this message is especially meaningful. It encourages embracing the wisdom gained from life's hardships and recognizing that our value is not diminished by others' actions or choices. By cultivating inner peace and self-love, we find the freedom to live authentically, beyond the need for external validation. This story invites us to cherish the quiet moments, honor our own journey, and understand that the greatest home we can find is the one we build inside ourselves, a sanctuary of acceptance, resilience, and unconditional love. Thank you so much for watching. We hope Samantha's story touched your heart. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Silent Wars to stay updated with more emotional and inspiring stories. See you in the next video.